I never thought I'd be told to serve anyone in my own home. But that's exactly what my daughter-in-law said to me one Tuesday afternoon, standing in the kitchen I built with my late husband 40 years ago. "Serve me or leave my house," she said. My house. Those words burned like acid, and my name is Loretta Mitchell. I'm 67 years old, a retired high school English teacher from Savannah, Georgia. I've lived in this house since I was 27. Every corner carries a memory. The laughter of my son David learning to walk, the smell of cornbread in the oven on Sundays, the echo of my husband's voice calling from the porch, and now, a woman who married into my family just 3 years ago was ordering me around like a servant in the very home my husband and I built with our own hands. Before I tell you what happened next, and trust me, Vanessa never expected what came after those words. Let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? Your kitchen. Your living room. Maybe at work, trying to take a break from someone who doesn't value you? Wherever you are, I'm glad you're here, because what I'm about to share isn't just my story. It's the story of every woman who's ever been disrespected after giving everything to her family. If you believe in justice, in dignity, in standing up for yourself when others try to push you down, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. I share stories like this every single day. Stories about betrayal, strength, and the kind of courage that comes when you've got nothing left to lose. This is the story of how I went from being told to serve or leave to reminding everyone exactly whose house this really is. I bought this house with my husband, Thomas, in 1984. We were both 27, young and determined to build a life that meant something. He worked construction. I taught English at a public high school. We didn't have much money, but we had each other and a dream. We laid every brick of this home with our own hands, painted every wall, planted the magnolia tree in the front yard the day we moved in. For 37 years, this house was filled with love. Thomas passed away in 2019 after a long battle with heart disease. I cared for him here, right in this house. After he was gone, people kept telling me I should sell, downsize, find an apartment somewhere quieter. But I couldn't. Every room in this place still carries his presence. His coffee mug still sits on the kitchen shelf. His favorite chair, the one with the frayed armrest, still stands in the living room. My son David moved out when he was 23, full of ambition, always talking about building a future that would make his father proud. And he did. He became an engineer, worked hard, bought himself a car, and seemed to have a good life. I was proud. When he met Vanessa 3 years ago, he brought her home one Sunday for dinner. I remember that day vividly. She arrived wearing a white designer dress, heels too high for our old wooden porch, and a perfume so strong it lingered long after she left. She hugged me quickly, too quickly, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Your house is lovely, Mrs. Mitchell," she said, glancing around like a real estate agent inspecting property. "Thank you, dear. Please, call me Loretta." Oh, I couldn't. It feels strange. "You have such a classic home. So vintage." She said the word vintage like it meant outdated. I smiled politely, but something in my chest tightened. During dinner, she talked about her boutique, about social media followers, about branding. David looked at her like she was the sun itself. I saw that look before. Thomas used to give me that same look when we were young. But there was something different in Vanessa's eyes. She looked at David not with love, but with calculation. When they got married a year later, I tried my best to welcome her into the family. I bought them a beautiful wedding gift, a handmade quilt Thomas and I had saved from our early years. She thanked me, but I never saw it again. Months passed, and slowly, Vanessa began showing her true nature. She'd visit with David on weekends and rearrange things in my kitchen without asking. "You should really update these appliances, Loretta," she'd say, running her manicured fingers along the old stove. "They're so outdated. I could help you modernize this place." "This house doesn't need changing," I'd answer. "It just needs care." "Oh, but David loves modern spaces. He told me this old-fashioned stuff reminds him of being poor." That one stung. I looked at my son, hoping he'd correct her. He didn't. He just stared at his plate. Over time, Vanessa found more reasons to visit, helping me declutter, organizing my drawers, cleaning up my living room. Each time she came, something disappeared. A framed photo of Thomas. A lace curtain. A figurine my mother gave me. I thought maybe I was imagining it. But the house was starting to look less like mine and more like something from her boutique's Instagram feed. Sterile, staged, cold. When I confronted her once about my missing photo frame, she smiled sweetly. Oh, it was cracked, so I took it to get repaired. Don't worry about it. That frame never came back. Then one afternoon, David called and said, Mom, Vanessa and I need a place to stay for a few months. The lease on our apartment ended early, and her business is struggling. Just until we get back on our feet. I hesitated, but I said yes. Because that's what mothers do. We make room. We give grace. We hope that love will smooth over the cracks. I had no idea I was inviting trouble right through my front door. When David and Vanessa moved in, I told myself it was temporary. Just a few months until they found a new apartment, that's what David said. I cleaned the guest room, changed the sheets, even placed a vase of magnolias by the window to make it feel welcoming. I wanted peace. I wanted family tea first. It was almost pleasant. Vanessa cooked dinner a few times, complimented my cornbread recipe, and even helped me water the plants. But it didn't take long for the tone of the house to change. The energy shifted the moment she started unpacking boxes. She replaced my family photos on the hallway wall with framed quotes about self-made women. She moved my wedding china from the dining cabinet into storage, saying, "These antiques don't match the aesthetic I'm going for." She started lighting expensive candles that smelled like perfume instead of home. I tried to pick my battles. After all, they were guests. But the day I walked into my kitchen and saw her repainting the walls from soft cream to a glossy white, I felt something break inside me. "Vanessa, what are you doing?" "Oh, just brightening up the place," she said, holding the paint roller like she owned the house. "White makes spaces feel larger. Modern." David agrees. "Did you ask me first?" She looked surprised, almost amused. "I didn't think I needed to. We live here now, remember?" That was the first time she said "we live here now" with that ownership in her tone. After that, everything began to revolve around Vanessa's comfort. She adjusted the thermostat because she liked the house colder, even though it made my arthritis worse. She threw away my old casserole dishes, saying they were too scratched to be sanitary. She even changed the grocery list, filling the fridge with expensive almond milk and gluten-free snacks while tossing out my grits and collard greens. When I tried to speak up, David would step in, always calm but distant. "Ma, please don't make things hard for her. She's just trying to help. You know how she is about organization." Organization. That's what he called it. But I could feel something deeper growing in her, a hunger for control. The small humiliations started piling up. She corrected me in front of guests. She rolled her eyes when I forgot where she'd moved the salt. Once during dinner she said, "Loretta, maybe it's time you stop climbing the stairs. It's not safe for someone your age. You should think about moving into a senior community." David stayed silent. I stared at him, waiting for him to say something, anything. He didn't. That night, I cried quietly in my room. I couldn't understand how my own son could let someone disrespect me in the house where he grew up. Over the next few weeks, Vanessa began introducing new rules. She said she wanted a peaceful household, but her version of peace meant control. She started labeling the pantry shelves, assigning chores, and insisting I check in before using the laundry room. One morning, I woke up to find her standing in the kitchen holding one of my coffee mugs. She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I think it's time we had some boundaries, Loretta. This house works better when we all know our roles." "Our roles?" I asked. "Yes. I handle the home management, David handles finances, and you, well, you can take care of the garden and your little hobbies. We don't need confusion." It was like she'd drawn a line across the floor and dared me to cross it. A few days later, she invited her mother and 2 friends over for lunch. They sat around the dining table, my table, laughing, sipping wine, while I stood at the stove finishing the meal. When I placed the last dish down, Vanessa turned to me and said, "Loretta, could you serve everyone before you sit down? I want them to feel like guests." I froze. The room went silent. Her mother smiled awkwardly. One of her friends looked away. I took a deep breath, forced a polite smile, and served the food. But inside, something was shifting. A quiet storm was gathering. That night, I lay awake thinking about the woman I used to be. Strong, independent, respected. The teacher who raised generations of children. The wife who stood beside her husband through everything. And now I was being told to serve in my own home. I knew it was only a matter of time before the breaking point came. The day everything changed started like any other. I woke up early as I always do, made my coffee, and went outside to water the magnolias. The morning air was crisp, and for a moment I felt peace. But when I came back inside, I noticed my armchair was gone from the living room. The one Thomas used to sit in every night to read the paper. "Vanessa, where's my chair?" I asked. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Oh, that old thing. I had it picked up by a donation center yesterday. It was taking up space." "You did what?" "It was falling apart, Loretta. It didn't fit the new layout. I replaced it with a more modern piece. You'll thank me later." I felt my stomach twist. That chair was my husband's. "You had no right." She finally looked at me, her eyes cold and calculating. "This is our home now. You can't cling to the past forever. Our home." The words hit harder every time she said them. That night, I heard her whispering to David in their room. Their voices carried through the thin hallway walls. "She needs to understand her place," Vanessa said. "This constant nostalgia, all the clutter, it's toxic. We're trying to build a modern life, and she's holding us back." David sighed. "She's my mother, Vanessa. And I'm your wife. You need to choose which one you're building a future with." The silence after that felt heavier than thunder. The next morning, she woke me up by knocking on my door. "Loretta, I need you to get dressed. We're having a family meeting." I came out to the living room, still tying my robe. She stood in front of me with her arms crossed. David sat on the couch, eyes down. "What's this about?" I asked. Vanessa cleared her throat. "We've been talking, and we think it's time to make some adjustments around here. Things have been chaotic." "Chaotic?" "Yes. The noise, the old furniture, the clutter, the way the house is being run. We want a cleaner, more structured environment. And for that to work, we all need to do our part." She pulled out a printed chart from her purse, a schedule with chores and meal times. My name was listed 3 times a day under kitchen duties. "What is this?" I asked. "A household system," she said proudly. "Breakfast at 8, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. You'll handle the cooking and serving since you're home most of the day. It gives you something to do, and it helps us maintain order." David shifted uncomfortably. "Vanessa, maybe this isn't the best way to say." "No, David," she interrupted, still looking at me. "She needs to understand. Loretta, we're grateful for everything you've done, but this house can't function like a museum anymore. You either help us maintain it or step aside." I stared at her in disbelief. Step aside? Yes. Serve me or leave my house. The room went silent. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. "Your house," I repeated slowly. Vanessa smiled. "David and I have been paying the bills for months now. The utilities, the groceries, even the insurance. If we're covering everything, that makes this our house, doesn't it?" David tried to speak, but I held up my hand. "Don't say a word, David. Not one." I turned to her. "You may pay the light bill, Vanessa, but this house was bought and paid for with 40 years of sweat and sacrifice. My name is on the deed, not yours. You are a guest here. Don't you ever forget that." Her smile faded. "You wouldn't last a week without us." I stood taller. Watch me. I walked back to my room, my hands trembling but my heart steady. I knew right then that I had to make a choice. I could keep living under her thumb, or I could take back what was mine. That night, I went through my old file cabinet. I found the property deed, the original mortgage papers, and every document that proved what I already knew. This house was mine, legally and rightfully. I placed the folder on the kitchen counter the next morning where Vanessa couldn't miss it. When she saw it, she laughed. "Oh, Loretta, are you trying to scare me with paperwork?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm reminding you of where you're standing. Every inch of this floor belongs to me." She smirked. "You're just bitter because your time is over. The world belongs to people like me now, young, smart, ambitious." I looked her straight in the eyes. "The world may have changed, Vanessa, but decency hasn't. And if you keep crossing the line, you're going to learn that the hard way." She laughed again, but I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She didn't know it yet, but the same woman she'd called old and useless was about to show her exactly what strength looked like. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Vanessa's voice echoing in my head, "Serve me or leave my house." Those words burned deeper than any insult I'd ever heard. I lay there staring at the ceiling, the moonlight spilling across the room, and I thought of all the sacrifices I'd made for this home. Every tile, every window, every nail had been placed with my hands or my husband's. I wasn't going anywhere. By dawn, I had made a decision. If Vanessa wanted a war, she was going to learn I didn't need to shout to win. Some battles are won in silence, with patience sharper than any blade. That morning, I went through the motions of my routine, made my coffee, read my Bible, watered the magnolias. I acted calm. Vanessa mistook my quiet for surrender. That was her first mistake. When she came down the stairs in her silk robe, holding her phone like a crown, she smiled at me as if I'd accepted my place. "Morning, Loretta," she said sweetly. "Don't forget the cleaners are coming today. I told them to start with your room. Try to keep things organized, please." I nodded. "Of course, dear." The way her smile widened told me she believed I'd given up. That was her second mistake. I needed information, real, tangible evidence of her disrespect, her manipulation, her lies. So I called someone I trusted, Reverend Paul, the pastor from my church. He'd known me and David since David was a child. I told him I needed to talk but didn't explain why over the phone. He invited me to the church office that afternoon. When I arrived, he looked concerned. "Loretta, you look tired. Is everything all right at home?" I took a deep breath. "No, Pastor. It's not. My daughter-in-law has taken over my house. She's pushing me out. She treats me like a maid." His face hardened. "Does David know what's happening?" "He sees it, but he doesn't act. She controls everything now. The bills, the bank account, the meals. She's trying to make me feel like a burden." He leaned forward. "What do you need from me?" "I need wisdom," I said quietly. "And maybe a little help." He nodded slowly. "Then we'll get you both." Reverend Paul connected me with Gloria Washington, a retired paralegal from our congregation. She was sharp, discreet, and more than happy to help another woman in need. Gloria met me at the church the next day, dressed in a navy suit with a stack of folders under her arm. "First things first," she said, flipping open her notepad. "Is the house in your name only?" "Yes. I have the deed." "Good. That's power. Keep that document safe, somewhere Vanessa can't touch it." "I already made copies." She smiled approvingly. "Smart. Now, tell me everything. And I mean everything." I told her everything. The chair, the schedule, the humiliation, the words. When I reached the moment Vanessa said, "Serve me or leave," Gloria stopped taking notes. "That's not just disrespect. That's abuse of power. You have leverage, Loretta. You just need to use it." "What do you mean?" Start documenting everything she says and does. Conversations, transactions, messages. If she's paying bills, print the statements. If she's controlling money, track it. If she's throwing things away, take pictures. We're going to build a timeline. It felt strange, almost thrilling, to take back control this way. I had spent months feeling helpless. Now, I had a mission. Over the next 2 weeks, I acted like the perfect housemate. I smiled, agreed, nodded. I let Vanessa think she was running things. But behind the curtain, I was recording every conversation with a tiny device Gloria lent me. I took pictures of everything she threw away, from my wedding china to Thomas's old books. I even started saving her text messages, the ones she sent to David complaining about me. She's impossible to live with. I swear if she doesn't move out, I will. David, we need to transfer the utilities into our name. That'll make things easier later. Each message was another piece of rope she didn't know she was wrapping around her own neck. But the biggest piece of the puzzle came one Thursday afternoon. I overheard her in the kitchen on the phone. No, the deed's still in her name, she said, lowering her voice. But David's handling it. He'll convince her to sign power of attorney soon. Once that's done, we'll sell the place. Sell the place. I froze in the hallway, my hand gripping the wall for balance. She wanted to sell my home. Later that night, I went to Gloria's house with the recordings. She listened in silence, her eyes narrowing. This is fraud, Loretta, she said when it ended. If she's trying to manipulate you into signing legal control, we can stop it, but we'll need proof that she's operating in bad faith. I smiled for the first time in weeks. She just gave it to us. The next morning, Vanessa strutted into the kitchen like nothing had happened. She handed me a cup of coffee, the first one she'd made for me in months, and said, "Loretta, can we talk about something important?" I sipped the coffee, pretending not to notice her tone. Of course. She sat down across from me, clasping her manicured hands. David and I have been thinking about the future. You've worked hard your whole life. You deserve rest. There's a lovely assisted living community just outside Memphis. It's clean, safe, and quiet. We think it's time you moved there. I raised an eyebrow. You think it's time? Yes. You can sell this place, have a nice nest egg, and finally relax. I even printed some brochures. She slid the glossy pamphlets across the table. Each one showed smiling seniors in manicured gardens. My stomach turned. I appreciate your concern, I said evenly, but I'm not moving anywhere. Loretta, don't be stubborn. We've already looked into financing options. David agrees this is best. That's funny, I said, because I talked to my lawyer yesterday, and she seems to think otherwise. Her face went pale. Your lawyer? Yes, dear. Gloria Washington. You may know her. Member of New Hope Baptist, retired paralegal, very good at her job. She's been helping me with some house matters. Vanessa's expression flickered from confusion to anger. You're trying to make this legal? No, Vanessa. You already did. She stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. I was trying to help you. You're making this toxic. I smiled faintly. Then you won't mind if my lawyer reviews everything, just to be safe. She stormed out of the kitchen, slamming her door upstairs. I sat there for a long moment, sipping my coffee, the faintest smile on my lips. For the first time, I felt powerful again. Over the next few weeks, the tension grew thick enough to choke on. Vanessa avoided me, and when she did speak, her words dripped venom. But I didn't respond. I went about my days calmly, volunteering at church, attending Bible study, visiting Gloria. Meanwhile, Reverend Paul connected me with an officer named Detective Harris, who specialized in elder financial abuse. He reviewed my recordings, the text messages, and the phone call I'd captured. His reaction was immediate. This is solid evidence, Mrs. Mitchell. You've done the right thing. We'll open an investigation. 3 days later, 2 officers visited the house. Vanessa panicked when she saw the patrol car outside. I'll never forget her expression when the detective said, "Mrs. Vanessa Mitchell, we need to ask you some questions regarding fraudulent activity and attempted property manipulation." David looked at her, confused. "Vanessa, what is this?" She tried to talk her way out of it, of course. "It's all a misunderstanding." Loretta's confused. She's making things up. But then Detective Harris played the recording, her voice, clear as day, saying, "Once David convinces her to sign power of attorney, we'll sell the place." David's face went white. Vanessa's lip trembled. I sat quietly in the corner, holding my cup of tea. They didn't arrest her that day, but they warned her not to contact any financial institutions until the investigation concluded. For the first time, she looked small, powerless. That night, David came to my room. His voice broke when he spoke. "Ma, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I touched his hand. "I know, baby. But now you do. And it's time you decide what kind of man you want to be." He nodded, tears filling his eyes. "I'll make it right." The following week, Vanessa packed her bags. She said she was going to stay with her sister for a while. David didn't stop her. The house was quiet again, the kind of silence that felt clean. But I wasn't done yet. Gloria helped me transfer all property and bank accounts into a secure trust under my name only, preventing any future interference. We updated the will, established clear legal protections, and even set up home insurance in my favor. When Vanessa tried to come back a month later, demanding to talk things out, I met her at the front door. She looked disheveled, desperate. "Loretta, please. You can't just erase me like this." I held the door open just enough for her to see the house behind me, peaceful, glowing with the morning sun. "You erased yourself the moment you called it your house. David needs me. David needs peace. And so do I." For a moment, she looked like she might argue. Then she saw something in my face, maybe strength, maybe calm, and she turned away without another word. I closed the door gently behind her, the sound echoing like freedom. Months passed. The house felt alive again. I repainted the living room in soft amber tones, restored Thomas's chair from a local upholsterer, and filled the walls with photographs of family, not of what was lost, but of what was reclaimed. One evening, as I sat on the porch swing under the magnolia tree, David joined me. "You were right," he said quietly. "Vanessa filed for divorce. She couldn't handle facing what she'd done." I looked at him and smiled. "Sometimes the truth has a way of setting us free, son. Even when it hurts." He nodded. "I'm sorry, Ma. For everything. I know you are. And I forgive you." The wind rustled through the magnolia leaves. The same tree Thomas had planted 40 years ago. The same roots, still standing strong. I realized something then, that strength doesn't always come from fighting loud battles. Sometimes it comes from standing still, from refusing to be moved. Vanessa had said, "Serve me or leave my house." But in the end, it was her who left. And me who finally stood taller than ever. When you spend your whole life building something, you don't expect to have to defend it from your own family. Yet that's exactly what I was doing. After Vanessa left the house under the shadow of a police warning, things grew quieter for a while. But quiet doesn't always mean peace. Quiet can mean plotting. And I knew that woman was plotting. The day after the detectives questioned her, she started calling David non-stop. He wouldn't answer, but I could see the missed calls piling up on his phone when he left it on the counter. Then the emails started. Then the letters. Long, dramatic letters about love, misunderstanding, manipulation. The kind of letters that sound rehearsed. I didn't comment. I had learned that silence is a weapon when used properly. She thought I would lash out, and when I didn't, it scared her more than any words could have. But I wasn't done protecting myself. Gloria and Detective Harris both insisted I go further legally. You have enough evidence for a restraining order, Gloria said. And we can freeze any attempt she makes to access financial assets or property transfers. She's on watch now. So, I signed the paperwork. Within a week, Vanessa was officially barred from coming near me, my home, or contacting me in any way. When David heard about the order, he didn't argue. He simply said, "Do whatever keeps you safe, Ma." That's when I saw the man I raised reappearing. The one with his father's quiet strength and my stubborn resolve. Still, I could feel his guilt. It hung around him like fog. Some nights, I'd hear him pacing in the hallway after midnight, whispering to himself. I didn't interrupt. He had to face what he'd allowed. 3 weeks later, everything began to unravel for Vanessa. The detective called me on a Wednesday morning. "Mrs. Mitchell, we've traced a suspicious financial inquiry linked to your address." "What kind of inquiry?" "She contacted a broker about listing your property, gave them your address, described the house in detail, and claimed to be preparing for sale." I felt heat rush to my face. "While under investigation?" "Yes. And she used her husband's last name, your son's, to make it sound legitimate. We already reached out to the broker. He recorded the call. She claimed she had power of attorney." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "She never had it. That's why we'll be pressing charges. We have everything on file." For a moment, I didn't say anything. The world was still, the sound of my own breath steady. I realized that justice, real justice, doesn't always come with shouting or revenge. Sometimes, it comes with a simple truth finally being heard. Later that day, Detective Harris visited to get my signature for the report. He told me the district attorney's office was reviewing the evidence. Fraud. Attempted theft. Identity misrepresentation. Each word landed like a weight being lifted off my chest. That night, I cooked dinner for the first time in months. I made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and collard greens, David's favorite meal since he was a boy. He walked into the kitchen, smelled the air, and stopped mid-step. "You cooked," he said softly. "It was time to make this house smell like home again." He sat down, and for the first time in a long while, we ate together in silence that wasn't heavy, just quiet and full of understanding. After dinner, he looked up at me. "I filed for divorce." I nodded. "Good." "She's furious. Said she'll ruin me. She's already ruined herself." He laughed a little, a sound full of sadness and relief. "You always said the truth catches up to people. I just didn't think it'd happen this fast. Truth doesn't run. It waits," I told him. "And when people keep lying, they eventually circle back and meet it face to face." The next few weeks were chaos for Vanessa. Her friends started to distance themselves. Word of the investigation spread around the office where she'd been working as a consultant. The title sounded fancy, but it mostly meant she depended on charm and manipulation. Without credibility, she had nothing left to stand on. By the time the DA's office announced formal charges, she was already losing everything. Her car was repossessed. Her credit cards were frozen. She tried to pin it all on David, but the documents and recordings made her look like the mastermind. The night before her court date, I found David sitting on the porch, staring at the magnolia tree Thomas had planted 40 years ago. The same one he used to climb as a child. "I keep thinking," he said, his voice low, "about how blind I was. How could I let her talk to you like that?" I joined him on the step. "Love makes people blind, son. But sometimes, losing the wrong person helps you see everything clearly. She called you worthless. She said you should serve her or leave." His hands tightened into fists. "If I'd heard that sooner, I swear, you would have done what you're doing now. Choosing right over easy." He nodded. Then he said something that broke me and healed me all at once. "You're the strongest person I know, Ma. I didn't just marry the wrong woman. I forgot who raised me." I put my hand on his. "Then remember now. The trial was public. The DA decided to make an example out of Vanessa because cases of elder property abuse were on the rise. When the headline hit the local paper, it read, "Daughter-in-law charged in elder fraud case. Attempted property theft under investigation." I didn't attend every hearing, but the ones I did attend were enough. I remember the first day she saw me in court. She looked smaller somehow. Her once perfect hair hung limp. Her confidence cracked like dry paint. When she took the stand, she tried to sound calm. Her lawyer guided her through rehearsed answers, but the evidence tore through her act like paper. The recordings, the texts, the false inquiries. When my turn came to testify, I spoke slowly, clearly, the way I did when I used to read stories to David as a child. She said, "Serve me or leave my house," I told the courtroom. But this house was never hers to give or take. It was mine. Built by my husband's hands. Paid for with our sweat. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not even family, erase that. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge looked moved. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts, attempted fraud, harassment, and coercion. She was sentenced to probation, community service, and restitution for legal fees. But the punishment wasn't just in the court's hands. Her reputation was gone. David filed for full separation the same week, and within months, the divorce was finalized. When the news spread, people who once praised Vanessa avoided her like smoke. Even her own sister stopped answering her calls. That's the thing about manipulation. It's powerful until the truth is louder. Months later, I received a letter. Handwritten. Shaky handwriting. No return address. I knew it was hers before I even opened it. "Loretta, I know you'll never forgive me. I don't expect you to. But I wanted you to know I'm sorry. I lost everything because I couldn't stop trying to control what wasn't mine. You were right. This house was never mine. I hope you find peace. I'm leaving town for good." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer next to Thomas's wedding ring. Not out of pity, but as a reminder that even those who hurt us can serve as lessons. That night, I sat on the porch again, the magnolia blossoms glowing under the moonlight. The air felt lighter. My chest didn't ache anymore. David joined me, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "She's gone," he said simply. "I know." He sat beside me. "You ever regret fighting back?" "Not once," I said. "If I'd let her take this house, I'd have lost more than walls and floors. I'd have lost myself." We sat in silence, the good kind this time, the kind that hums with peace instead of pain. Inside, the clock chimed 9 times. Each note echoed like a heartbeat through the home that had survived everything. Storms, loss, betrayal. Before going to bed, I stood by the window and whispered to the night, "Thomas, we did it. Our home's safe." The magnolia leaves rustled like an answer. The following Sunday, I returned to church. The congregation stood when I walked in. Reverend Paul smiled from the pulpit. "There she is," he said. "The woman who showed us all what grace under fire looks like." I laughed softly. I just did what I had to do. Gloria hugged me afterward. "You didn't just protect your house, Loretta. You reminded every woman in this church that age doesn't make you powerless." Those words stayed with me. Because that was the real message. Not revenge, not even justice, but power reclaimed quietly. In the months that followed, life found a new rhythm. David moved to a small house nearby. We had Sunday dinners again, like we used to. Sometimes his co-workers would visit, curious to meet the mother who beat the system. I didn't correct them. It wasn't about beating a system. It was about surviving it with dignity and tact. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, I'd receive letters from other women, strangers who'd heard the story. "My daughter tried to take my savings. I stood up for myself because of you. I thought I was alone until I saw your case on the news." Every letter felt like a ripple, proof that what began as my fight had turned into something bigger. One afternoon in early spring, I was pruning the magnolia tree when David came home holding a small box. "What's that?" I asked. He smiled. "Something for you." Inside was a gold plaque engraved with words that made my eyes sting. Loretta Mitchell, built this home with love and never let anyone take it away. We mounted it by the front door together. As he hammered the last nail, I felt Thomas's presence in the breeze. This house had seen decades of life. Laughter, tears, betrayal, redemption. But more than anything, it had witnessed endurance. And as I looked around, I knew one thing for certain. Vanessa thought power meant control. But real power comes from knowing who you are, standing your ground, and walking through fire without losing your soul. That night, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. They tried to make me serve or leave. Instead I stood, and they're gone. God didn't give me this home so someone else could take it. He gave it to me to teach others that peace must be guarded, not surrendered. I closed the journal, turned off the lamp, and lay down with a heart finally still. Outside, the magnolia tree swayed gently, whispering the story I would never have to tell again. A full year had passed since the trial ended, and Vanessa vanished from our lives like a shadow retreating from the dawn. The house was quiet again, but not the uneasy kind of quiet that comes after chaos. It was the kind of quiet that hums with peace, the kind that makes you exhale and realize you've survived the storm. Every morning I woke up to the same soft light filtering through the lace curtains Thomas had hung himself 40 years ago. I could almost hear him humming in the kitchen, the sound of a spoon tapping against his coffee mug. Sometimes I still spoke to him out loud. Not out of grief anymore, but out of gratitude. Gratitude that the home we built still stood. Gratitude that I had found the strength to defend it. Life didn't stop after the verdict. It changed shape. It grew fuller in ways I never expected. David had moved into a small house just 5 minutes away, a cozy white brick bungalow with a porch that reminded me of ours when we were first married. He visited often, bringing groceries, fixing little things, or just sitting on the porch to talk. Sometimes he brought Patricia, his new partner, and they'd both stay for dinner. She had the kind of laughter that fills a room, deep and warm, and every time I saw her reach for his hand, I saw healing happening quietly between them. "Ma," David said one evening as we shared a peach cobbler I'd baked that morning, "you ever think about selling the house now that things are calmer? Maybe moving somewhere closer to the city?" I smiled. "This house is as close to my heart as it gets. You know that." He laughed. "I figured you'd say that. I fought too hard for it to walk away now. Besides, the magnolia tree would never forgive me." The truth was, I had thought about it once or twice. Not because I wanted to leave, but because I wanted to decide. There's power in having the choice. But every time I pictured another place, my chest felt tight. I'd spent my entire adult life within these walls. This house held every version of me, the young teacher, the new wife, the mother, the widow, and now, the woman who refused to be erased. What I didn't realize then was how my fight had traveled far beyond these walls. One Sunday after service, Reverend Paul asked if I could stay behind for a few minutes. When the congregation had gone, he sat me down in the front pew. "Loretta," he said, his voice soft but deliberate, "your story has touched more people than you know. We've had calls from local news stations asking to speak with you. They want to cover elder justice awareness. Use your experience to educate others." I felt my stomach twist. Me. On television. Lord, no. I'm not built for cameras. He chuckled. "You're built for truth. And truth doesn't need rehearsing." 2 weeks later, I found myself sitting under bright studio lights, telling my story to a reporter who listened with genuine empathy. The segment aired under the headline, "Senior Woman Fights Back Against Family Exploitation and Wins." The response was overwhelming. Letters poured in from across the state. Some from elderly women who'd been afraid to speak up. Some from sons and daughters who regretted not believing their parents sooner. One letter in particular stayed with me. It was written in blue ink on floral stationery. "Dear Mrs. Mitchell, My sister tried to take Mama's savings after our father died. We didn't know what to do until we saw your story. Mama said if you could fight back, she could too. She's staying in her house now, with her garden just like yours. Thank you for giving her courage. Carla J. I read that letter 3 times before placing it on the mantel beside a framed photo of Thomas. See? I whispered. We didn't just save a house. We started something. From that point forward, my life wasn't just about survival. It was about purpose. With Reverend Paul's encouragement, I started a weekly meeting at the community center called Silver Voices. It began small, just me, Claudia, and 4 other women from church, but within months, the room was full every Saturday morning. Women from every walk of life came to share their stories of being dismissed, overlooked, or manipulated. Some were fighting family pressure to sell their homes. Some were dealing with caregivers taking advantage. Others just needed to feel seen. We created a support network. Gloria, my old lawyer friend, volunteered to teach free sessions on legal protection for seniors. Detective Harris stopped by once a month to explain how to spot scams. Before long, the meetings became a safe haven for anyone who needed to remember they weren't powerless. One morning, during a particularly emotional session, a woman named Teresa stood up. She was 75, soft-spoken, with silver curls and trembling hands. I almost lost my house last month, she said. My nephew said I was too old to handle my finances. He forged my signature on a loan. I didn't know what to do until someone showed me the article about you, Mrs. Mitchell. You made me believe I could fight back. And I did. The room erupted in applause, and for a moment, I had to look away so no one would see my eyes fill with tears. After the meeting, she came up to me and held my hands. You saved me without even knowing me. No, Teresa, I told her. You saved yourself. You just needed someone to remind you that you could. When I went home that afternoon, I sat on the porch swing and watched the magnolia tree sway gently in the breeze. For the first time, I realized the roots of that tree stretched far beyond my yard. They'd reached people I'd never met. Life had come full circle. David's divorce was finalized months ago, and he was happier than I'd seen him in years. He joined a local construction firm and started volunteering at the same community center where Silver Voices met. One day he surprised me by installing a ramp on the front porch, not because I needed it yet, but just in case. When I laughed and asked why he was preparing so early, he grinned. Because now I get to take care of you, Ma. On your terms. Patricia became like a daughter to me. The kind of woman who shows up with flowers for no reason and insists on washing dishes even when I tell her not to. One evening, as we sat in the kitchen drinking tea, she said, "You know, Loretta, you're kind of famous now." Famous? Hardly. People at the clinic talk about you all the time. They say you're an example of what strength looks like. I shook my head, smiling. Strength doesn't mean shouting or fighting. It's in staying calm when the world's trying to shake you. She nodded. That's why you're unforgettable. Her words stayed with me long after she left that night. A year after Vanessa's trial, the city of Charlotte announced an annual Elder Empowerment Day. Gloria called to tell me the mayor wanted to honor me as one of the first recipients of the Community Justice Award. When I arrived at City Hall for the ceremony, I didn't expect the crowd waiting outside. People held signs that said, "Protect our seniors," and Loretta's law saves lives. My knees almost buckled. They'd passed a local ordinance inspired by my case, stricter protections against property coercion targeting seniors. They called it the Mitchell Amendment. When the mayor handed me the plaque, she said, "Mrs. Mitchell, your courage turned pain into progress. Because you stood your ground, countless others now have the tools to do the same." I accepted the award, holding it close, and when I stepped up to the microphone, the hall went silent. I didn't plan to become an example, I said. I just wanted to keep my home. But sometimes God uses the smallest battles to start the biggest changes. If my story helps one person stand up for themselves, then it was all worth it. People stood and clapped, and I felt something deep inside me settle. For the first time in years, I felt not just seen but understood. That evening, after the ceremony, I walked home instead of letting David drive me. The air was warm, the sky painted with streaks of orange and violet. When I reached my porch, the lights inside glowed like they were welcoming me back from a long journey. I paused before unlocking the door, looking at the little gold plaque David had installed months ago. Built with love, protected with strength. Inside, the clock ticked softly. I poured myself a cup of tea, the kind Thomas used to make before bed, and carried it to the living room. The smell of magnolia drifted in through the window. I thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the betrayal, the courtrooms, the long nights when I wondered if I'd done the right thing. And then I thought about the women who'd written to me, about the lives that had changed because one person decided not to give in. That was when it hit me. This wasn't just my story anymore. It belonged to all of them. So I began to write. Not a journal this time. A book. My house, my voice. It was part memoir, part guide, part open letter to every woman who'd been told she was too old, too soft, too small to fight back. I wrote in the evenings, sometimes until the early hours of the morning, the glow of the desk lamp my only companion. Each chapter was a wound stitched closed with truth. When it was finished, Gloria helped me find a publisher. The book didn't make me rich, but it reached people. Senior centers, churches, libraries. It became a resource, a symbol of quiet resistance. 6 months after it came out, I received a letter from a high school teacher in Atlanta. Her students had read my story in class as part of a unit on ethics and courage. They cried, she wrote. They said they never realized how often older voices are silenced. You made them listen. I framed that letter. One morning, the following summer, I was watering the garden when a car pulled into the driveway. A woman stepped out, tall, mid-30s, neat suit, familiar eyes. For a moment, my heart clenched, thinking it might be Vanessa. But this woman looked different. Softer somehow. Mrs. Mitchell, she said. I'm Leah Sutton. The last name made me freeze. You're related to Vanessa? She's my sister, she said quietly. And before you close the door, please know I'm not here to cause trouble. I didn't move, but I didn't send her away either. What do you want, Leah? She looked down, wringing her hands. Vanessa's been in rehab for the past year. She hit rock bottom after the divorce. She asked me to tell you she's sorry. I don't expect you to forgive her, but she wanted you to know she's trying to be better. I studied her face. There was no manipulation there. Just honesty. How is she now? She's clean. Working at a shelter upstate. She doesn't have much, but she said losing everything made her realize how much she'd taken for granted. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, tell her I hope she keeps doing the work. Forgiveness isn't a door I can open easily, but I can wish her peace. Leah smiled faintly. That'll mean a lot to her. When she left, I sat on the porch, the sunlight warm on my skin. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just release. That's the thing about forgiveness. It isn't for the other person. It's for yourself. And I finally understood that. As the years rolled on, my home became more than a refuge. It became a meeting place for strength. Silver Voices grew into a non-profit organization. We partnered with lawyers, social workers, even local colleges. David handled logistics, and Patricia managed outreach. I served as the face and heart of it, though I always said, I'm just the gardener who planted the seed. Every Saturday morning, people gathered in my living room, sometimes 20, sometimes 50, to share, to learn, to fight for themselves. And every time I saw a new face, I remembered how alone I'd felt once. That's why I kept the door open. On the anniversary of Thomas's passing, we held our first official Silver Voices benefit gala. The mayor attended, as did Reverend Paul and Detective Harris. We raised enough money to offer free legal assistance for 10 families facing property disputes. That night, as music filled the community hall and laughter mingled with gratitude, I stood by the window, watching the reflection of the lights on the glass. David joined me. "You realize what you've built, right?" he said. "I built a home," I answered. "The rest just grew around it." He smiled. "Dad would be proud." "I know he is. I can feel it every time the magnolia blooms." The night ended with a standing ovation after Reverend Paul took the microphone and said, "Loretta Mitchell didn't just keep her house. She reminded us all what home really means." Now, as I sit here a year later, writing these last words at my old oak desk, the same one Thomas used to balance the checkbook on, I can finally breathe without the heaviness of the past sitting on my chest. My name is Loretta Mitchell. I am 73 years old. I live in the same house where I built my life, where I lost and found everything, and where I proved that age is not weakness but wisdom sharpened by time. If you're watching this or reading this, I want you to remember one thing. Power isn't loud. It doesn't always roar or shout. Sometimes, power sits in a rocking chair with a cup of tea, waiting for the world to realize it's been underestimated. I stood my ground when they told me to serve or leave. I chose neither. I stayed. And by staying, I changed everything. So to every woman who feels small, forgotten, or cornered, know this: you are stronger than they think. Your voice matters. Your home matters. Your story matters. And if someone ever tries to take what you've built, look them in the eye and say what I said, the words that started it all. This is my house. And I'm not going anywhere. Then stand tall, breathe deep, and watch how even the storms bow to you when you refuse to be moved.